a meeting, which is very official. It's on our calendar at the beginning of the year. And we talk about, we have a 10-year plan, a 3-year plan, 1-year goals, and then quarterly goals. So, at the end of the year, we revised and looked at, okay, what did we do for the year? And also looked at what were our wins, right? Because it's easy, I think, when you're in a growth mindset with your business to lose track of the wins. So for us, it was important to do the reflection piece of seeing, okay, what's the progress that we've made? And now, being at the beginning of the year, right, where do we want to be and where do we want to go?
Welcome to Financially Savvy in 20 Minutes, a podcast hosted by me, Natalie Torres-Haddad, an international award-winning author, 2-time TEDx speaker, and investor, along with Vera Egley, an investor, sales and marketing pro, and multi-language podcaster. We will share the tips and tricks from interviews with self-made entrepreneurs, leaders, and those who have attained financial freedom while learning financial literacy in multiple languages. Welcome to Financially Savvy in 20 Minutes. And today's guest, I had the honor of being part of their podcast, Make It Rain, which I highly recommend you to listen to, especially if you're listening or wanting to learn more about investing in real estate. And I'll let them tell you a little bit about themselves. But I actually met one of their their hosts now more than 3 years, I would say. It's funny how time flies, but I think Daisy and we met at a function in LA from the Latinista, one of my friends, Jai Vargas, put together. And it's funny how when you speak into existence what you want, you meet other people that are either doing the same or at least have like-minded goals. And Daisy is definitely one of those people. And since then, I've just been watching what she's been doing and through social media. Now that she's no longer in California, but in Texas, it's just great to see how she's representing Latinas, how she's just representing women perfectly well. And along with Luke, who's her co-host as well, who is just a brilliant guy in his own. And we'll get a little into it. But first, thank you so much for being a part of today's show.
Yeah. Thanks for having us. Yeah, it's an honor. Especially like you said, you and Daisy have known each other for a while, and then we've seen everything that you've done over the past few years. So yes, this is awesome.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I would have never thought, a few years ago that we'd be here on your podcast. So it definitely feels like full circle for sure.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And so let's just get right into it. So, and I'd like to hear both of your individual answers because it's obviously it's interesting when you work together as a partnership, but it's also you bring your own experiences to any type of relationship, right? Whether it's professional or personal. But the question we always ask people is, do you remember the first time that you got paid? It might have not most likely not been a 9 to 5, but it made you think like, wow, this is this amount of money. I can do more of this. How about we start
Yeah,
with you?
for me, it goes back to when I was really young. And, I started working with my dad. Would do tile and carpet, on the weekends. He had his W-2, and then he would just do this on the weekend to get a little bit more money. And I started going and working with him. I remember very specifically because I love the money. I was very young. I was probably around, oh goodness, 13, maybe 14, potentially even younger. It's kind of hard to remember now. But, people would tell him, why are you bringing your daughter? Especially me being a woman, right? Being a girl. If there was anybody that was helping, usually it was a boy, right? And my dad didn't have boys at the time. It was just me. So, I would go and work with him. And I remember we would wake up at like 5 in the morning, and just get that, I had like the ugliest, dirtiest clothes because you get dirty. And we would be there all day, right? We would be playing Mexican music in the background and working. And I remember after one of those times, my hands had splinters. We were shoveling dirt, and I was just in a really bad shape. And I got home, and my mom was like, "Why are your hands so bad?" And I said, "Because we were shoveling." And so she said, "You're not going to work tomorrow." This was on a Saturday, and I said, "Oh, I'm going to work because." The next day was payday, right? So, I went, I was fine. My dad gave me some gloves and, I toughed it out. But I remember just, getting It was around $350 at the time. It was the most money I'd ever made at the time, tax free. Don't tell the government. And I just felt like invincible, right? I felt like I did this work. It was very hard, manual work, and then I got paid. So that's the first one that comes to mind for me.
That's awesome. You got some worth ethic instilled in you at a very young age, and I like that very much. And Luke, how about you?
For me, it's like uh, I know when I first started getting money, like early on, my dad his thing was like, your guys' job is school. Like you guys don't have a job, and this was like young. I'm talking like elementary school. It's like your job is to go and get A's. Like that's what I want for Christmas. I want A's. It's like that sort of thing. So he would give us money for good grades in school and stuff like that. But I mean, the first time that I really did anything that was on my own or sort of like outside of that was in high school. I had I started selling stuff on eBay. Like I had books, I had clothes, like I had video games, and so I started selling stuff on eBay and like doing an arbitrage even with the even like if you go deep enough, you end up figuring stuff out. So like I would do looking back on it, I wasn't doing the right thing, but it's hindsight's 2020, right? But I would end up doing it was called what was it? It was like media mail. Media mail, that's what it was, right? So you could set something that was actually media and it would be super cheap. And I would charge like $10 for shipping and it would cost me like 50 cents, right? I was like trying to make money off of the shipping and off of the clothes or whatever stuff I was selling on eBay. And that was probably like 15, maybe 15, 16, something like that. Um, but I remember doing that at that age and I was like, okay, like this works. I like this, right? Because it was stuff I already had and stuff I didn't want anymore. And then I was able to make a margin off of even just like the shipping even, which was huge.
That is so cool. And both of you, obviously, you start at an early age to just kind of think differently. You're right. Like it's like you're not doing what your typical young teenagers are doing. And I think that I think shows a lot of character. And I love that. That's one of the reasons why I love asking that question, because you just never know where people are like, this is the spark. And Daisy, you and I have a similar, because my dad used to take me on his plumbing jobs. And so, I don't know how to do a lot of plumbing, but I know the basics, and which most people don't. And so, and I think that's something that, gives us some of that confidence that you, like you just said, look, you're willing to do something different that maybe most people aren't doing. And now fast forward, you are investing in real estate, and multifamily, and it's the beginning of the year. I know a lot of, especially our listeners, are planning or have not already been planning what their next investment is going to be. And so, maybe you can talk about some tips or things that you're doing in your planning process at the beginning of the year, because maybe this is a time where people really need to get their goals in place.
Yeah, so ours is probably a little bit different than maybe what some of your listeners are, but we end up using a framework to run Make It Rain Capital. And the framework is called EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System, right? And so we have annual planning and we have quarterly planning. And so that's what we end up using, right? We have essentially like a big business plan and then work to continue. We refine that quarter over quarter, annually, year over year as well, and end up looking at like, okay, well, long term, where do we want to go? Let's try to reverse engineer this and figure out where and how to end up getting there ultimately. So I would say that that's my answer. I'm interested in hearing what Daisy has to say though too.
Yeah, I would say on the professional side for sure, right? EOS, it's based on a book called Traction, which has absolutely changed our lives and has just, I think, given us a lot of clarity, right, to know exactly what we need to focus on. So the amazing part about it is if your listeners are starting a business, it just provides a backbone, right, to be able to focus on what matters most and what's going to push the envelope, right, the furthest. And for us, the awesome part about it is that as Luke mentioned, right, we have a meeting, which is very official. It's on our calendar at the beginning of the year. And we talk about, we have a 10-year plan, a 3-year plan, 1-year goals, and then quarterly goals. So at the end of the year, we revised and looked at, okay, what did we do for the year? And also looked at what were our wins, right? Because it's easy, I think, when you're in a growth mindset with your business to lose track of the wins. So for us, it was important to do the reflection piece of seeing, okay, what's the progress that we've made? And now, being at the beginning of the year, right, where do we want to be and where do we want to go? And so just continuing to adjust that, right? We have every quarter we meet, and then every week we also meet. So, they all look very different, right? The quarterly and the yearly ones are a lot longer and more involved. I think it's just a continuous thing that we strive to do on a very regular basis.
I like that. I'm definitely gonna have to check out that book, but I like how you're saying you're breaking it down right into quarters, because I think too often, especially in the beginning of the year, I think it's that joke where everyone's like Happy New Year, and I'm setting my resolutions or my goals, and not even 30 days later they've already broken every single goal or haven't continued with it. And sometimes because it's too big, right? It's kind of how do you take those little bites to just kind of keep moving forward. So I like the fact that you're saying you have the 10-year plan, but you also have the quarterly, the yearly. And sometimes I know we forget to do that because we want so much of it. But I think it's a really good plan. And maybe for someone that's never invested in real estate, what is something you guys recommend, especially in the beginning of the year, that with maybe some tips that they can start um, positioning themselves, because maybe they haven't been qualified or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I would say it kind of depends on where, like, what their goals are. I'm an engineer by education, so I always go back to that. It's like, well, what's the goal, and kind of literally reverse engineer from there. I mean, if somebody's looking to, house hack, or looking to own their own real estate outright, right, or have a duplex or a fourplex, it's like, of course, you have to educate yourself, get around people who've already done it, and be able to come up with a plan from there. If somebody doesn't want to be that, and they want to be on the passive side, so to speak, and they just want to end up here, like, give my money to whomever, and let them work the magic because of timing or something else, right? They don't want to spend all the time. Then it's like, well, listen to podcasts like ours, and other people who've been on our podcast, and end up educating yourself around multifamily and what these different investments look like, because different operators operate different ways, and there's more than enough opportunities to end up learning from the basics, and then looking at, okay, what's my competency that I have as an individual, because all of us have our own inherent gifts, and looking at how do I end up jumping in and getting involved. A couple of years ago, we weren't planning on doing this like what we're doing now,
Yeah.
but we figured out like how to get involved and how to add value, and how to end up, moving the ball forward. So that's what I'd recommend.
I would add to that, right? I think Luke sort of hit it on the nail with regards to working your way backwards. Once you understand what the goal, what the end goal, and the end goal is going to change, right? It's gonna morph depending on your journey and what you go through. But my biggest recommendation, Natalie, would be, if you're listening to this and you want to invest, you want to buy your home, whatever the case may be, take action every day consistently. And it doesn't have to be go to a 10-hour seminar, right? Pay $20,000 or $50,000. It can be listening to Natalie's, podcast for 20 minutes
Yeah.
every day, right? And then you start listening to podcasts or reading books or going to a meetup. I think there's a level of escalation, right? Depending on who you are and how comfortable you are. But for me, ultimately, what worked and what I would say changed sort of the trajectory of my life, transitioning from international education into real estate, which I never imagined I would do, was surrounding myself with what I call my tribe, right? Finding my tribe and finding, for me, it was a group of badass women that were doing what I wanted to do, and being in the space with women that were doing that showed me that it was possible. So wherever you are now, whatever experience, however much capital you have or don't, there's something that you can do today, and there's something that you can do every day to make progress and stay consistent.
I like that. Both of you are hitting it right on the money. It's a lot of us sometimes we're afraid to reinvent ourselves, or afraid to say, oh, you know what, I'm going to try something new, whatever. Maybe it's a completely different career path, or maybe it's just leading you to the next step, right? And so I think for a lot of people that are listening, especially in the beginning of the year, to remind themselves, kind of giving themselves that little slack of like, yeah, I got to be consistent doing something every day. So excellent advice on both. And I know with the new year jitters, a lot of people have the imposter syndrome, already have those self doubts. But if there's any tips that you do for yourselves to stay motivated, because the consistency can be hard to follow, and what is it they say, it takes at least 21 days to form a new habit, right? So what is it that you're probably would suggest to someone that is just starting out, maybe with their quarterly planning, that will keep them motivated to do so?
Yeah, for me, what's worked is having accountability, right? It has been a deal changer, right? For us, we have the blessing, right, of Luke and myself. We're business partners, but we're also married. I don't know if we mentioned that at the beginning, right? And so that just has made a huge difference, right? Because if I am not, hitting my target in whatever metric I have selected for myself, right? And he didn't give me, this metric. I selected it for myself, and if I'm not hitting it, we're talking about it every week. And so, that just the consistency, right, of communication and knowing that if you don't do something, somebody's going to hold you accountable. And that could be a friend, that could be sometimes it's easier to have an accountability partner that's a complete stranger, because then there's not, the identity piece that's attached to it of, failure or, not being enough, right? You can be whoever you want to be with a complete stranger, and you can choose who you are. And so I am not going to lie and say, I don't feel the imposter syndrome, right? It's very real, and it's being a Latina, being a woman in a multifamily space where it is predominantly male, it is predominantly white. I do experience that in one way or another, but I have an amazing tribe. Going back to that again, right? Luke and other people included that are like, no, you deserve to be in this space. Like you have a place here, right? And so I think just surrounding yourself with people that will continue to remind you of your own worth and power, helps to not do away with the voice, but minimize the voice.
I
Yeah, and I end up thinking, so I'll end up saying what works for me, right? I guess it's two things. One is writing down my goals, and some of these goals are goals that will take a couple years to accomplish. Some of these are I may never even accomplish them in my life or in my lifetime because they are so big. And other ones, it's like it just is continually taking time to work on. So some of them are around health, some of them are around finances, some of them are around relationships. Like they're all encompassing. So I just write those down each morning. And I've been doing that for 6, 7 years now. And so like they've changed over that course of time, right? But that's for me, that's helped me kind of stay focused on what it is that I want. And like I think just doing it, like to Daisy's point, just starting something is better. Like, half done with great effort is better than not done at all, especially just like trying to take action. Because I think a lot of times with education, as we end up, going through school, it's like, hey, you have to be right. And like the smart kids are like the good ones. And it's like, I mean, it's like they got it right, but I mean, that's not the way that the real world works. I mean, sometimes you're rewarded by simply taking action and learning from different things. So I'd say that Natalie ends up helping is writing down goals, and then also like tracking things like Daisy ended up saying. Like if you just have even just one metric, it's like, hey, all I want to do is just like listen to one podcast a day, or I don't know, I just want to, read 10 pages a day from self education, or I want to go onto LinkedIn and, like follow this person or follow one person or comment on a post. Like it almost doesn't matter what it is as long as it's something. But it's a matter of having accountability and being able to like continually make forward progress because all those little steps add up. I mean, the journey's long and in the end, the race is only with yourself, right? Which we talked about on our podcast that where you were a guest on ours. But the end goal is going to change. You're going to zigzag all the way around, but it's a matter of just like continually making progress, and you can iterate along the way. You can always change things. Like that's completely fine.
You're right. I love that. It's sometimes people need to remember that you just said it. Success is not a straight line. It's zigzags. It goes around in circles, and eventually you get to that. And I think we're gonna have you back definitely for another quarter one, because 20 minutes is always never enough. But thank you for some of those insights. I know a lot of people are just kind of like figuring out where to start, and or to restart again, right? To reinvent themselves, and that's kind of what the new year brings, is that hope that people can have a better financial future. So thank you for sharing and what you're doing as well, because It's wonderful to see people of color doing it, people that are not only young, that are, venturing out to something new. You've been in this, Texas now for a couple years. And so it's kind of cool to see that other people can move to other places. You don't have to just be where you are. Or you can invest in other places that you don't live in either. So it's kind of the great thing about having your podcast and our podcast available for people that need to get some of the education that maybe it was harder for us to find. So thank you so much for being that. And before I let you go, I know you mentioned the book tracking, but if each of you can tell us, well, first, one of your favorite books, maybe something you read or are reading now, and then how people can find you.
So one of my favorite books that I recommend is Outwitting the Devil. It's by Napoleon Hill. He wrote Think and Grow Rich, but this book came out a few years ago. It was in the archives. And it's, if you're trying to figure out what you want to do, then it's a great book to read. So that's what I would say. He's actually like interviewing the devil, if you will. It's literal and figurative, but it's a great read.
And mine, I'm going to point to it. It's right behind me. It's called The Energy of Money. I don't know if it's one that you've heard of, Natalie, but it's just helped me understand finances and money from an energy perspective and almost more of a spiritual perspective, right? Understanding what you talk a lot about, your money story, your first encounters with money, your family's history. It just goes so deep into values, right? Like who you want to be in the world related to money. So it's just, for me, it's been a very like spiritual path, in terms of understanding my past and then also being able to formulate, right, what I want my money story to be going forward. So that's a great one that I definitely recommend.
Yeah. And then to reach out.
Yes. How?
Sorry.
No, go
and
for
then to
it.
reach out and to reach out to us. I mean, you can always go to our website. It's makeitraincapital.com. But if you Google us and put Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, I mean, we're on a bunch of different platforms. So we're also available across those as well. And of course, our podcast, which is Make It Rain.
Awesome. So everyone that's listening, they have already 2 new books, 3 really, that they can start with their accountability for themselves of getting educated. Once again, thank you so much for being a part of this. And I'm wishing you all the best and prosperous new year. And I'm sure we're going to have you back. And once again, you're listening Financially Savvy in 20 Minutes, but make sure you stick on to the next episode in Spanish as Daisy will continue talking with Vera on some sub tips that you need to know. So once again, thank you guys.
Thank you so much for having us on.
Thank you, and please make sure to subscribe and leave your comments and reviews. To learn more about the podcast, check out the website and Instagram, Financially Savvy in 20 Minutes, and watch interviews on YouTube and IGTV. To become a sponsor or hire us for your next workshop or speaking engagement, please visit financiallysavvyin20minutes.com. All it takes is 20 minutes daily to become financially savvy. Music by Nikki and produced by Robert DeLude.